This video is a non-graphic, respectful documentary script based on publicly available reporting. It does not accuse anyone beyond what authorities have publicly stated. If you like careful, source-driven true crime, subscribe and stay with me to the end. 4 girls. A small yogurt shop at closing time. A fire that did more than burn. For 3 decades, the city of Austin carried a question nobody could answer on record. Who walked into that store, tied up teenagers who should have gone home, and left the city with a wound that never healed? After 34 years, investigators finally put a name on the board. Not a rumor, not a theory. A name tied by DNA. And the name belongs to a man who cannot be put on trial. Tonight, we retrace the case that shaped a generation of fear in Austin. The I can't believe it's yogurt murders of December 1991. We'll follow the search, the false turns, the overturned convictions, and the new science that reached backward through time to identify a suspect, Robert Eugene Brashers. We'll ask what DNA can prove, what it cannot, and why a case can feel both solved and unsolved at the very same moment. It's just before midnight, December 6, 1991. A patrol officer sees flames clawing up from a small yogurt shop on West Anderson Lane. Fire crews move fast. When the smoke thins and the heat stops talking, the worst truth emerges. 4 victims inside. Their names matter, and they will be said. 17-year-old Eliza Thomas, 17-year-old Jennifer Harbison, 15-year-old Sarah Harbison, and 13-year-old Amy Ayers. They were bound. They were shot. The store was set on fire. In the morning, the city wakes up different. Parents count their kids twice. Doors stay locked a little longer. And detectives begin a marathon that will outlast many of their careers. From the first days, the case carried contradictions. There were signs of control and signs of chaos. There were timelines that bent depending on who remembered what and when. There were tips, so many tips, that information started to feel like noise. Investigators worked every angle: robbery gone wrong, targeted attack, multiple offenders, just one. The city wanted closure, the families needed it. But science in 1991 did not have the reach it has now, and the fire had erased what it could. Years passed. In 1999, 4 local men were arrested. 2 of them, Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott, were eventually convicted in 2002 and 2003. The trials leaned heavily on confessions, but the confessions themselves raised questions, long interrogations, changing details, and, crucially, DNA that did not match them. Appeals followed. In 2009, the convictions were overturned, and the men were released. The state did not retry them. The message from the lab was louder than any courtroom argument. The DNA at the scene belonged to someone else. If you've ever watched a cold case roll back down the hill after it seemed to reach the top, you know the feeling that follows. Disorientation, disappointment, and the quiet fear that the trail just snapped forever. For Austin, that fear sat in the room like a 5th chair. Every time the anniversary came, the headline returned, but the answer did not. Then the science changed. Not overnight, and not because of a single lab machine, but because of an approach. Genetic genealogy. The same technique that rearranged the Golden State Killer investigation made its way into cold case units across the country. Instead of looking for a perfect match in a criminal database, investigators could build a family tree from partial DNA profiles, follow branches, find relatives, and narrow down a candidate who had never been swabbed or arrested for the crime. It takes patience. It takes careful legal protocols. and it takes a sample that still carries truth decades later. The Austin Cold Case Homicide Unit kept going. They retested. They widened their net. They searched for relatives who didn't know they were part of this story. And while the public watched an HBO docuseries revisiting the case, detectives followed the data where it finally pointed, to a man named Robert Eugene Brashers. Who was he? A drifter by some accounts, a construction worker by others, a known violent offender in multiple states. He died in 1999 by suicide during a standoff with police in Missouri. Long after his death, DNA connected him to a pattern: sexual assaults and homicides across states like South Carolina, Missouri, and Tennessee. Investigators from different jurisdictions had already started to say his name in low rooms. Now, Austin did too. Authorities say DNA tied to the crime scene tracks to Brashers through genetic genealogy, the same type of analysis used in other high-profile cold case identifications over the last decade. Reports also mention ballistic evidence and a casing recovered during the original processing that later became important when compared across cases. The picture that forms is not theatrical, it's methodical. A tree of relatives, a short list of potential suspects, and a dead man whose DNA sits, unchanging, in the math. Here, two truths collide. Naming a suspect with DNA in a 34-year-old quadruple homicide is a massive investigative achievement. At the same time, the suspect is dead. There will be no cross-examination, no testimony under oath, no jury instructed to listen and decide. For families who survived the 1990s trials, reversals, and years of waiting, this feels both like daylight and like fog. What can be responsibly said now? Authorities have identified Brashers as the suspect based on DNA. Public reporting confirms his death in 1999 and his alleged involvement in other violent offenses identified posthumously by genetic evidence. Investigators consider this a significant breakthrough, not a casual update. The case remains open because open is how you handle unanswered questions even when you have a name. Was he alone? The scene involved multiple victims, control, and a fire. Some experts argue that crimes of this scale often involve more than one person. Others note that a single offender with a weapon and a plan can control multiple victims, especially in a commercial space after hours. Without living suspects to question and without new eyewitnesses, the answer stays in the realm of possibilities, not conclusions. What was the motive? Investigators have not announced one. In some cases attributed to Brashers elsewhere, sexual violence sits at the center. In others, burglary or control dynamics appear. The yogurt shop case shows elements of control, sexual violence, and arson meant to destroy evidence. But motive is a label that follows behavior. It is not proof by itself. Why did it take so long? The original crime scene was heavily damaged by fire. DNA techniques of the era were limited. Chain of custody standards and testing sensitivity have evolved. Probabilistic genotyping, genealogical searches, and family tree triangulation simply did not exist as operational tools in 1991. Cold case detectives are caretakers of fragments who wait for technology to catch up. It finally did. What does this mean for the men once charged? The legal record already speaks. Their convictions were overturned, they were released, subsequent DNA work excluded them. This update re-emphasizes that exclusion. For them, vindication is complicated. Years were lost in prison. For the system, it's a reminder about the volatility of confession-driven prosecutions without corresponding physical evidence. Now, sit with the families. Decades of grief do something to a person's voice. Over time, many learn to speak in measured ways because fury burns hot and then burns out. Hearing a police chief say significant breakthrough lifts a weight but never lifts all of it. Some relatives have said the identification eases suffering. Others still want to know how this suspect intersected with their loved one's final hours and whether anyone else was there. Relief and sorrow can live in the same sentence. And what about the city? Austin does not look like it did in 1991. But memory maps don't update when skylines do. The yogurt shop case lives in the civic DNA, in the way people remember who picked them up from practice that winter, in the choice to keep porch lights glowing for a little longer, in the quiet inventory parents run when the garage door closes at night. Putting a name on the suspect doesn't erase any of that, but it does shift the story from a fog of unknown to a shape that can be faced. A simple look inside the science. A preserved biological sample from the crime scene contains markers, locations in the genome that vary among people. Traditional CODIS searches look for profiles already in law enforcement databases. Genetic genealogy uses consumer-style marker sets to build a list of distant relatives who share segments with the unknown contributor. From there, genealogists map family trees backward and forward using public records, births, marriages, obituaries, until a candidate fits. Age, sex, place, timeline, opportunity. Then investigators seek more direct DNA, perhaps from a discarded item or a legally obtained sample from a relative, to confirm. That is the short version of a long, careful process. This process is not casual sleuthing. There are rules, there are warrants, there are ethics about which databases can be searched and how consent works. Cases like this, high profile and carefully briefed, become templates for other departments. How to present a genealogical identification, how to set expectations, how to emphasize that science narrows and human investigation confirms. Why did Brashers' name start showing up in other places? Investigators in multiple states have long believed he was responsible for a series of violent acts in the 1990s. As local agencies connected their unsolved cases using DNA and ballistics comparisons, a pattern emerged. In the yogurt shop case, reports mention a recovered casing and comparative analysis across jurisdictions as a part of the mosaic. None of this is as simple as a TV montage. It is cross-departmental calls, lab reports, and patient building on the work of people who retired decades ago. If DNA ties him to the scene, is the case simply solved? Think of solved as a circle with two halves, attribution and adjudication. Attribution says, we can name the person whose DNA we found and show why he fits. Adjudication says, we proved it in court beyond a reasonable doubt. When a suspect is deceased, the second half cannot happen. So investigators do the next best thing. They share what they can. They close loops with families. They invite additional information from anyone who crossed paths with the suspect, and they keep the file open for developments that clarify whether others were involved. What changes now, practically? Tips may surge. People who remember a coworker, a construction site, a passing comment. Old photographs can become evidence. Ballistics from other scenes might get a second look, and cold case detectives, often underfunded, can point to a major result and argue for continued investment in long-term science. That matters beyond one case. There's another layer, pop culture attention. An HBO documentary series refocused national eyes on the yogurt shop case, reminding viewers what the city lived through and what remained unclear. Media pressure can distort, but it can also help. It can pry loose funding. It can motivate witnesses. It can make space for a press conference where a chief says what a chief could not say for 34 years. Could a DNA-named suspect ever be wrong? In responsible practice, the answer should be vanishingly unlikely. Genetic genealogy doesn't end with a clever tree. It ends with a direct comparison that reaches the statistical standards labs require. But labs are run by humans. Mistakes, contamination, and misinterpretations are why protocols are strict and peer review matters. In this case, multiple major outlets reported on the identification, and the police department issued formal statements. Many eyes are on this file, that's good. How should we talk about Brashers? Carefully, he cannot defend himself, he cannot clarify his movements. But the public record already ties him to other violent crimes via DNA, and now Austin's cold case unit has named him as the suspect here. The ethical way to speak about him is to follow the record, not lead it. Say what is documented. Avoid what is dramatic but unsupported. Respect the gravity of naming anyone in connection with 4 murdered children. If you live outside Texas, you may wonder why this one case resonated so widely for so long. Part of it is the age of the victims. Part is the late-night workplace setting. Safe places flipping into unsafe. Part is the fire, which felt like both an ending and an erasure. And part is what happened later. Arrests, confessions, convictions, doubt, reversals, and a vacuum that could only be filled by either science or confession. Science finally spoke. What remains unresolved? Motive, the number of participants, the precise sequence inside those last minutes before the fire, whether any object stolen connects to other scenes, whether anyone else should be held accountable posthumously for aiding, abetting, or covering. Some of these may never be answered. That is the honest thing to say. So, what does closure look like when a suspect is dead? It's smaller than TV promises. It's a name spoken out loud in a room where families listen. It's a box on a wall that moves from unknown to likely. It's an officer telling a sister, "We did not stop, and now we can tell you what the evidence says." It's not justice as a verdict. It's closure as a sentence that can finally end. We know who did this, instead of a question that never could. Before we close, a word about how to talk about cases like this with respect. Keep the focus on victims. Say their names. Don't sensationalize method. Don't fill silence with speculation just because the silence is heavy. Praise the work, not the hype. And when science gives you a name, understand both its power and its limits. Eliza Thomas, Jennifer Harbison, Sarah Harbison, Amy Ayers. 34 years later, their city finally heard a name attached to a suspect identified by DNA. For some, that will be enough to breathe differently. For others, it will be the start of new questions. Both reactions are real. Both deserve space. If you have information about Robert Eugene Brashers' travels or work in the early 1990s, especially connections to Austin, contact law enforcement. Even after a name is identified, small details can complete a picture. Thank you for listening. If you want more source-driven, non-graphic true crime explained clearly, subscribe, leave a thoughtful comment, and share this video with someone who watched this case grow cold and finally warm again. What do you think this DNA breakthrough changes, and what does it leave the same?